What's up, guys? So I want to talk about some older flagship phones with the Snapdragon 855 chip. So even though we're seeing the Snapdragon 888 chip, these phones are still excellent for gaming and just doing pretty much anything on your phone. Still very powerful chip. First up is the LG V50. So this is $300 and under now. I'll link the Verizon version because I believe that's still compatible with 5G. If you do get the Sprint version, that is not compatible with 5G anymore. So do note that. Now you have a premium design on here. It's a glass and metal phone. Very beautiful design on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and you also have a beautiful POLED HDR10 display. It's a 6.4 inch display. It's actually a 1440p display with a very high PPI of 538. So overall, just a beautiful display when you're looking at colors, just deep blacks. Overall, a beautiful display. Now you do have a notch which you can hide with the software, but it is really nice display, guys. So everything is just super sharp on here. But you do have Android 10 out of the box, again with the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. All of these phones will be able to play pretty much any game at high settings, whether it's Call of Duty, Fortnite, or whatever. So all these phones make for excellent gaming phones, and you do have micro SD support with 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. This phone also has stereo speakers which sound okay. They sound pretty good, and you also have, I guess the highlight with this phone is the quad DAC. So I love the quad DAC. If you have a good pair of headphones, and you can definitely get the most out of them with this phone, which is always an awesome feature. So you do have your NFC on board, as well as your physical fingerprint scanner, so all of that is there, and the cameras on the V50 are pretty good. So you have a triple camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 60 megapixel ultra wide with 4K video. At least the notch up top makes for a good dual camera setup as well. So you have an 8 megapixel standard and a 5 megapixel wide lens, so if you take a lot of group selfies, that'll be very beneficial for you. Overall, as you can see from the pictures, the V50 takes some really good photos still. Very good color, very natural colors, good depth of field, good dynamic range, and video is also pretty solid on the V50 as well. So the battery life on the V50 is also pretty good. You got a 4,000 milliamp battery with 18-watt fast charging and wireless charging. So I get around 8 hours of screen on time with my V50. But again, depending on whether you're on 5G or not, depends on how good your battery life is going to be. Next is the OnePlus 7 Pro. I'm still using this phone as my personal daily driver until they come out with one that does not have a punch hole. It's probably when I'll upgrade for those that are asking, but overall this phone really does it all for me. You have a premium design on here. It's aluminum frame, glass back on here. There's no IP rating, but this phone, from what I've seen with videos, does do pretty good with being dropped in water and stuff like that. So you do have that. So if you do drop it in water, it won't break immediately from what I've seen. So you do have a full screen, no notch, no punch hole, AMOLED display, 90 Hz HDR10 plus. It is overall a beautiful display. It's my favorite thing about the phone, the reason why I've kept it for so long. It's a 1440p display, 516 for the PPI. Just a beautiful looking display, especially when you're looking at videos or whatever you're doing. It just makes the experience very immersive. Now there is a slight curve to the display, but overall it's not really an issue. I don't get accidental touches because I have a case on mine, but I guess that's the only gripe with the display. But moving on, you do have Android 10 out of the box with Oxygen OS. It's a very clean version of Android, one of my favorite skins, and this phone should get Android 11 this year as well. You do have the Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640. Again, a very good gaming phone as well. I guess the only gripe with this one is it doesn't have any micro SD support. It's 128 gigs on the base storage and 6 gigs of RAM, which is fine. I haven't ran out of storage on mine, but if you're somebody that you know, takes a lot of video, pictures, games, then that'll kind of be a bummer for you, I guess. But you do have pretty nice sounding stereo speakers on here as well. There's no headphone jack, so that's one of the things I hate about this phone. I really wish it had a headphone jack. But you do have NFC on board, as well as the fingerprint scanner is under the display. It is very fast, one of the fastest in the business still. So that is one thing that I really love. And you also have Face Unlock too, if you want to use that to unlock your phone. So you do have pretty good camera setup on here. It's a 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel telephoto, also a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You get 4K video, and again that pop-up 16 megapixel camera shoots in 1080p as well. Photos on the 7 Pro are good. I never complain taking photos on here. It overall just does a really good job with color, detail, gives you some nice looking photos. You can throw Gcam on here if you want sort of like the pixel style photos for your portrait photos. I've noticed that it does a really good job with that. But otherwise, photos and videos on the 7 Pro are 100% fine to me. Now, if you got excellent battery life on the 7 Pro, I can easily get through the day with this phone, and it charges pretty decently fast at 30 watts. There is no wireless charging, which might be a bummer for you, but overall, since it charges so fast, it's not a huge deal for me. Next is the LG G8. So you can easily find this again for $300 or under, depending on whether you want it new or you know, refurbished. And you can think of this pretty much as a small LG V50, the first phone that we looked at. That's basically what it is. It's missing, I guess, a few things, but you do have pretty much the same design. It's a glass and metal design on here, IP68 dust and water resistant. You have a smaller display on here. It's at 6.1 inches. It's a POLED HDR10 display. Again, 1440p, 564 for the PPI. Again, it's a beautiful display. Colors, everything looks super vibrant, deep blacks. You do have a notch on here. Again, you can hide the notch with the software if you desire to. Now, you do have Android 10 out of the box. I'm guessing the G8 should get Android 11 this year as well. And you also have the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. This phone is a gaming beast. It can pretty much play anything, again, on high settings. I've never had an issue gaming with the G8. You also have 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. So the phone overall has been very fast. I've never had an issue with LG skin, which people complain about for some reason. It's really bare, almost stock Android like, so I never understood that. But you do have a pretty decently loud speaker on here, as well as the headphone jack. Again, you have the quad DAC, NFC on board with pretty good Face ID as well, and you also have the fingerprint scanner on the back, which works excellently. And you do have very good cameras, pretty much comparable to the V50, but it's a dual camera setup this time. It's a 12 megapixel standard, 60 megapixel ultra wide, so there's no telephoto, but the photos on here are great. You do have an 8 megapixel selfie shoot in 1080p. Never had an issue with the G8's cameras on here. Again, this is also compatible with Gcam, so colors, detail, everything is super vibrant. Video looks pretty great on the G8 as well, so no issues with the camera on here. So battery life, again, is pretty much great on the G8 as well. It's a 3,500 milliamp battery, 21 watt fast charging. You also have wireless charging on board too. I usually can get around 7 hours and 30 minutes to 8 hours of screen on time with this phone, again, depending on how light or how hard you use your phone, but this one is pretty good on battery life. Next is the Galaxy S10e. So this phone is also a pretty good phone if you want a more compact phone, again with the same power with the 855. It is a little bit smaller. It's a glass and metal design. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. This goes for around $350 to $400. Again, I'll put all those links down below. This phone will have Android 11 with the latest One UI 3.0, and again, the US model will be the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. So you do have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. This phone is a beast, especially if you want the more compact experience for people with smaller hands. This is definitely a great pickup. You have the little punch hole, a beautiful display. I think Samsung makes some of the best looking displays still, and you also have the headphone jack is on board, some very loud and punchy speakers, which sound excellent. You also have NFC, so this phone really has everything, and it has an awesome fingerprint placement on the side. It's a physical fingerprint scanner with the power button. It's just awesome. I think it's the best place to put a fingerprint scanner. I've said that a million times. You also get very good camera on here still. It's a 12 megapixel standard, 16 megapixel ultra wide. You also get 4K video with a 10 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K as well. The photos are really nice and vibrant and gives you the Samsung very punchy image processing on here, which makes everything super lifelike, which a lot of people like. You also get good detail, depth of field is excellent, video is pretty good too on this phone. Overall, it's an excellent camera at this price point, so really no complaints with it. I guess battery life on here is a little subpar. It's a 3100 milliamp battery. You can get around 6 hours and 30 minutes, which for a normal person should be about a full day of use on this phone. So not amazing battery life, but just good. So you do have wireless charging with reverse wireless charging, so you can actually charge up, you know, your AirPods or another phone, whatever takes wireless charging. You can actually charge another device, which is very cool. Last is the Xiaomi Redmi K20 Pro. So I have the standard K20, and if you get the Pro model, you do have the Snapdragon 855 on here. Now the Pro model and the standard model have pretty much the same design, but this is an awesome phone for, again, people that want a full screen design here, and it has a premium design. It's glass and metal, aluminum frame, Super AMOLED HDR10 display, 6.3 inches, a 1080p 409 for the PPI. That's a beautiful display on here. No notch, no punch hole, and it's actually a flat display, which is really awesome. So if you don't like the 7 Pro, look at this phone. You do have Android 10, MIUI 12 out of the box, Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640, no SD card support though, and that's the only thing with this phone. It's 64 gigs on the internal storage and 6 gigs in RAM, so very low, and for not having, you know, expandable storage is kind of strange. So you do have a speaker on here, which from what I've heard sounds decent. 3.5mm jack, NFC on board as well, but that is for the Chinese model only. Fingerprint scanner under the display, and you also have a 4000 milliamp battery with 27 watt fast charging. So the cool thing about this phone is that it's fairly cheap on eBay as well. I'm trying to get one myself. I've been bidding on it, but if you don't want this one, then you can definitely get the standard model. I've had that one. That one is also great, very fast too. So this is my list. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.